Alright, hello everyone, and welcome to attempt number 3 at game number 1 of our round of 8 match between SpaceOddity and Cubit32. We've had a little bit of issues with disconnects. Hopefully we're going to have everything fixed up this time. Cubit's tried to make some changes to his setup, at least gotten a restart going, see if that's going to solve the issue, and we can press on forward here. I'm not really talking about what's going on in the game, because frankly this map is really depressing right now. I mean, we can just look. Look at all these resources right in here. We've got the hills of hatred. Probably have some spires of doom in the corner over here. Things just aren't looking good on this map. Wow. I have no idea what I would do in these players' position, and I'm very glad I'm not the one playing this game. Okay, well we have found some iron finally on the map. 3 sources of iron, one of them is high. SpaceOddity, interestingly, despite spotting high iron and kind of a low iron, has chosen to go for scientific anyways. Have I managed to bug the game? Check this out. That is going to be annoying this whole time. Okay, we fixed it by opening another tooltip. Fantastic. Oh, that was... Well, there you go, Soren. Chalk that one up. I know you're watching right now. Okay, getting back to the match, Cubit managed to locate a significantly better scientific founding location by just finding a spot with, well, 3 low iron triangles in a triangle. 3 low iron tiles in a triangle. And so I would give this founding advantage on over to Cubit. He also founded second. And so not only is he not going to have to pay for his iron to generate steel, he is going to have an extra claim when he reaches HQ level 2, which should be not far away, given that he already has the 80 aluminum bought up. He's generating 3 iron a second. 3 steel a second. He's only about 5 seconds away from having all the resources he needs to, and of course he has the funds to hit that upgrade button whenever he so chooses. SpaceOddity, on the other hand, is waiting for the aluminum to come in, waiting for the steel to come in on only half the steel production that Cubit has. So despite his slightly later start, Cubit's founding location combined with decisiveness in purchasing his resources is going to allow him to leap ahead of SpaceOddity, get to HQ level 2, and start throwing down those very important reactors very early this game. Carbon scrubbing already at this stage of the game. Now this is a bit of a weird patent to be popping up in a 1v1. And that is primarily because, well, carbon scrubbing, it's really a late game patent. You're unlikely to make a lot of money from it in a 1v1 right now, simply because 1v1s generally don't go too far into the late game. And electronics has very little pressure on it. Chems have very little pressure on them. There's really no demand for these resources, especially in a game without a robotic player to consume the electronics. So carbon scrubbing for 10,000, that's just going to be 10,000 debt over to SpaceOddity. We're going to have to see if she ever gets anything out of that. Now, if the game does go very, very late, she will be in a good position, but for now, she's just in a bit of trouble. I love this play from Cubit. It's an awful play when you're the other player. You feel so bad about it, but what's happened is Cubit has decided to temporarily commit all of his money into driving up the price of iron by purchasing a large amount of it. He is only holding aside enough funds to get the buildings planted that he wants to do. He will likely be doing things like selling off these resources as he needs them for the black market, but what he was doing temporarily was just raising the price of iron, knowing that A, the iron was going to be a good investment because his opponent was consuming some of it, and B, it would cost SpaceOddity a lot of iron to keep the steel mill running, and so she would have to purchase it at that higher inflated price, and it would hurt her even more if he could keep the resources committed there. At this point, he has sold out of it to try and work his way into the glass, since SpaceOddity did manage to get to level 2 and get that upgrade done, and now is also looking to buy glass. So instead of driving up the iron price to affect his opponent, he's driving up the glass price, and this is awful for SpaceOddity. An iron shortage has come down. That's going to cost her steel mill so much. Cubit, in fact, reacting to this shortage almost immediately, has moved into metal mines rather than steel mills. We can see that steel's really not doing so well. And these metal mines will be producing twice as much iron as the steel mills would be steel. So that's a very nice move on Cubit's part, going ahead and making use of the fact that there was a shortage, and he's going to be making quite a lot of profit off of that as we move forward in this game. Okay. Well, difference of opinion in where to make money at this stage of the game between these two players. SpaceOddity has moved into water pumps, whereas Cubit has selected electrolysis reactors. And the reactors, it looks like right now, will be making the slightly better profit. The water pumps all together only sitting at about $50 of income, whereas just one electrolysis reactor makes a bit more than that for the time being. Water is kind of a nice idea at the start of the game. But when you are a scientific player and you can move into that fuel, it can be a very, very nice move because you can avoid that water cost. You don't have to worry about the fact that water is getting expensive. You don't have to care. Your electrolysis reactors will just keep on keeping on. And so everything so far this game kind of moving Cubit's direction. He didn't get carbon scrubbing, so he didn't get that debt from that game of chicken the two players were basically playing with that almost useless patent. He's gotten into the electrolysis reactors. He got into the iron better and is making more money off of that while it's been more expensive than steel. And it's been a very well played game by Cubit so far. Also on top of that, he's managed to move to HQ level 3. Secured plenty of aluminum, secured a geotherm, gotten some glass production up. SpaceOddity once again simply in silicon rather than glass immediately. Now, he has left himself slightly open to things like mutiny effects hitting his buildings. If mutinies were to come down on these electrolysis reactors as they were near full, if they were to come down on these glass furnaces as they were near full, that could be a big money swing away from Cubit and into SpaceOddity's pockets. However, chances of that happening are fairly low, as SpaceOddity is just struggling to cobble together the funds to even allow herself to upgrade to HQ level 3, much less start abusing that black market. Interestingly enough, Cubit going for an engineering lab this early in the game. That's a bit of an aggressive play, really. I mean, you do not see a lot of players going for engineering labs in a 1v1 scenario. One interesting thing this is going to do is go ahead and bring chems into the picture for SpaceOddity. Unfortunately, it's not really the resource you want to be using with carbon scrubbing, as that fuel cost is still very, very high for chems. But Cubit effectively driving up the price on chems, driving down the price on fuel, could allow SpaceOddity an edge back into this game when combined with her carbon scrubbing, and put her in a very good spot to find an odd little place to make some money.
The black market is online.
All right. Cubit has been doing some use of the black market. It looks like he's mostly been buying up new claims for the time being. And if he's got the money to do it, he may as well. SpaceOddity not really giving him anywhere that's worthwhile to attack, mostly because she's just not making money in too many places at the moment. So instead, he can simply commit those funds to further money in the future by buying up all those claims, preventing SpaceOddity from doing the same, and getting himself more and more and more and more ahead. Steel research is what came out of the engineering lab for the first little segment. He's also gone ahead and improved his power at this point. It'll be interesting to see how long he keeps working this thing and how many upgrades he goes ahead and get down. Another power improvement coming out of that. Should raise him to the point of running a slight power surplus. And he could continue to keep upgrading that for quite some time, given that it looks like SpaceOddity has not bothered to place power yet this game. More auctions for patents coming up this game. We already saw, I believe, a water engine. Initially we saw carbon scrubbing, and this time we're looking at teleportation. This is potentially a very valuable patent in a game of scientific players, lots of resources separated from your base, lots of potential for pirates coming down. And so if you can have good security away from those things and away from mutinies, you can pay a very, very high cost for it. And 24,000. Now, that I honestly think is a bit cheap for teleportation when you're talking about paying debt for it. I honestly think that could have gone a bit higher out of Cubit, but he's already in such a strong position, I don't know if it's really going to matter as we move through the game. Solar panels coming down for SpaceOddity at this point. That's a good play, generally. That'll allow her to kind of move into the power market, which is quite lucrative at the moment. She has 100,000, 111,000 debt already from a combination of the high power cost and those auctions she was getting. Cubit is actually already 66% of the way to buying her up because SpaceOddity's stock price has fallen from $5 to $3.61, and it just continues to plummet right now since it is nighttime. And of course, that power is not going to be active. So even receiving teleportation at that low price for teleportation might not be low enough to keep her in this game and allow her to survive Cubit. SpaceOddity has, however, purchased up some of her own stock. Going to go ahead and raise that price and just make it a little bit more difficult for Cubit to drive in the knife. Because Cubit is choosing to ignore the stock price for an extended period of time. He has finally started buying into the stock now. However, he was still dancing around for a while, getting those future upgrades, trying to take some kind of benefit there. And while it looks like it might pan out for him, if SpaceOddity had managed to secure all of her stock, we could have looked at a very different end to this game, which unfortunately I think is coming fairly quickly with the sheer amount of power generation that Cubit has, the fact that he's nearly paid off his debt. Even this EMP is not going to save SpaceOddity for long, simply because power's not going to move down all that fast. Cubit did have a power surge of his own go down onto SpaceOddity's solar panels as well, and I'm still just very concerned about how much money each of these two players is making. SpaceOddity not making any money off of her power, the single most lucrative tiles she has, making some money on food, and that's about it. Whereas Cubit did finally have to make his transition away from reactors and into farms himself. Glass not doing him as well, but still one full HQ level ahead, actually managing to make money on his power. Things are still not looking good for SpaceOddity at this stage of the game. A power surge goes ahead and lands right before Cubit manages to bring his own farms online, so no chance of that backfiring and hitting his buildings. Solid use of black market while his buildings were offline and in transition. I would really love to see a chem transition come out of SpaceOddity at this point. It could be an interesting little thing to catch Cubit off guard and just an extra source of income instead of something like these steel mills, which are just flat out losing money at this point because of the high price of iron, the lack of adjacency bonuses, and of course, the slight power cost that they have attached to them. But this pirate auction is exactly what we're talking about. Cubit only bids on these in order to save himself. He cannot get any benefit out of these pirates, and so he is just driving that cost up for SpaceOddity, trying to make sure SpaceOddity can't secure them. This is where Cubit has lost out in the teleportation battle. He must take on 28,000 debt to protect himself. And that is actually a big deal at this stage of the game when he was attempting to make some amount of money on power. Power has dropped off fairly heavily simply because of the potential overcommitment to it. And now we're going to have to see a transition out of Cubit instead. And he's just put himself into a bit of an awkward situation to actually make the money to finish off SpaceOddity at this point. But I think SpaceOddity's stock price is simply too low. The debt is too high. The interest itself might finish her off. And if her stock price continues to plummet the way it has been, Cubit can sit on his current amount of funds and not have to care at all, especially since he has made this food transition. He has upgraded it significantly to a 50% bonus, and I think he will be able to use that combined with these chem labs that he's going to actually jump into to go ahead and finish off this game. 94% right now. I doubt Cubit will let that go much over 100 before he finishes things. We should see that red button coming up shortly, as long as he's actually paying attention, and this game be over. Don't hit that upgrade button, Cubit. I will hate you forever. Come on. Let's do it. All we're waiting for, there it is. Cubit spots that he has enough money. That's going to be the game. Much better founding position for Cubit. Much faster and stronger start, including moving into the reactors with solid adjacency bonuses, having the adjacency bonuses and the iron available for his steel. It was just very cleanly played from start to finish, with that little bit of an odd play with the engineering lab that he definitely made work, getting into the right resources at the right times, and just cleaning up the game very simply. SpaceOddity, on the other hand, unfortunately struggling a little bit, wasn't as quick to react to the iron shortage, didn't have as good of a founding location, probably should have scouted a bit longer before continuing into the game. Also, interestingly enough, grabbing up this carbon tile, despite having carbon scrubbing, definitely a bit of a questionable play there. And was just pretty much one step behind Cubit all game, despite getting this slightly earlier found. Don't think there's much else to talk about. We can go ahead and see exactly what Cubit did with his engineering lab. 6 technologies for such a short game. You can see definitely using that scientific bonus attached to the engineering lab and making sure that he always had it active. Upgrading power twice, upgrading food twice. Both of those were quite lucrative for him over the periods of time that he had them online. Then upgrading simply steel production once and chemical production once. This allowed him to very easily go ahead and make the money when the money was there to be made. But he didn't feel the need to stick around in the resource any longer than he had to, right? He moved out of steel as appropriate. He moved out of power as appropriate. and then finally landed on the solid chem food production to clean up the game. All right, so that's going to be game number 1 over to Cubit, finally. Let's see if we can get into game number 2.